Call to order the town council meeting, January 31st, 2023. It's 6:09, and we are in the Harvey Hearing Room. Roll call, please.
Counsel Honan?
Here.
Counsel Fusillo?
Here.
Counsel Munson?
Here.
Counsel Belcher?
Here.
Counsel DeMarco?
Here.
Counsel Flockhart?
Here.
Counsel Aiello? Vice President Ruggiero?
Here.
President Lettieri?
Here,
Thank you.
Motion to go into executive
please
session.
stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Jan Flaherty Robley. Jan was a finance administrator in the Winter Public Library for almost a dozen years, from 2003 to 2014. She passed away in mid-January, and we are all very sorry for her loss. Thank you. Please sit. Town council is going to enter into an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and also to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. There a motion? Motion by Councilor DeMarco, second by Councilor Belcher. Roll call, please.
Counsel Honan?
Yes.
Counsel Munson?
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo?
Yes.
Counsel Belcher?
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco?
Yes.
Counsel Flockhart?
Yes.
Counsel Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes. We will be in executive session for approximately 45 to 50 minutes. We will come back to the beginning of the meeting in open session at approximately 7 p.m. Thank you. In open session, on item agenda number 5, minutes from the January 17th, 2023 meeting have been circulated. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor Flockhart. Any discussion? Additions, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. State of the town. So we have a state of the town address. Shouldn't take more than 90 minutes or so. But,
You
have to stand at the podium.
no, I don't think I have to.
Yeah,
but-
that's what we should make them do. Be faster.
I'm gonna need to go to the bathroom.
To the residents of our great town, the Winthrop Town Charter gives the council president the obligation as well as the great opportunity to address the town yearly in an effort to clearly define our goals for the upcoming year and to reflect on the past 12 months. No such address can begin without first offering my sincere thanks and our sincere thanks and appreciation to all our department heads, their staffs, as well as our appointed boards and committees. Without them, our town could not function. They provide us comfort and safety. They educate our children and grandchildren. They keep our town clean and inviting. They provide us with attractive and welcoming parks and recreation spaces. They maintain our infrastructure and streetscapes. In short, they facilitate in providing us a community which I am extremely proud, appreciative, and honored to call home. Calendar 2022 was, I think, remarkable in many ways. On the top of the list, I believe, is the addition of our town manager, Tony Marino. Tony has all the attributes that I envisioned at the beginning of the process. He's incredibly hardworking, knowledgeable, a great communicator, always available, a blue-collar, roll-up-your-sleeves, willing not to just delegate but really get involved type manager. Tony hit the ground running and hasn't stopped yet. We've had a great partnership in laying the groundwork for some much-anticipated projects that I hope the town will get their chance to weigh in on in the very near future. Tony has been able to fill multiple positions that were very much needed, including an assessor, a treasurer, and very recently, a CFO who is here with us tonight, Dylan Cook. Welcome to Winthrop. Tony is working alongside town planner Rachel Kelly, and they have been able to secure many grants, which we will be seeing the benefits of in the near future. Tony is,
I didn't even know it was on.
Tony has been the perfect fit for Winthrop.
Hi, Karen.
Tony has been the perfect fit for Winthrop, and in turn, I believe Winthrop is the perfect fit for Tony. And speaking of perfect fits, I'd like to take a minute to thank our town clerk and council clerk Denise Quist for the incredible work she does in so many areas, from clerk's office to elections to assisting various committees, and of course, making our councilors' lives and absolutely mine much more harmonious. I know I would be lost without her. Some highlights from 2022 would include the completion of the new tennis courts across from the middle high school, our ability to leverage remaining funds from the MSBA project to supplement and bolster much new technology in the middle high school, the long-awaited completion of the CBD project. The benefits of the infrastructure piece of that project are required not only for the benefit of the current neighborhood, but even more so for any potential prudent development that may occur in that area. The streetscape portion of the project, to me, is still something that will be more clearly seen with the maturity of the plantings and promised continued maintenance. The E.B. Newton Clock Tower restoration is such a visual enhancement to our town. Really a focal point. Former Councilor Rich Farino deserves much of the credit to begin this project, and amendments and increased funding from the council enabled us to go further and more detailed than was anticipated. I had mentioned earlier about the addition of the new CFO, and I would like to also mention that with the blessing of the superintendent, the school committee, and the council, we are consolidating that position to include the title of school finance director. This will, as the charter was designed to do, bring the schools in the town into an even more cohesive relationship. Throughout 2022, the superintendent, her leadership team, and entire staff did an unimaginable job in ushering in a post-COVID education experience that we can all be extremely proud of. In most other cities and towns, the completion of a 29-unit apartment building would not be major news. However, in a 1.6-mile densely populated Winthrop, it is a challenge, but with the helpful and thoughtful feedback from neighbors and a very good working and collaborative relationship between the town and developer, the Somerset project came to completion. It has been an incredible upgrade as to what was there at that site, and I believe that most would agree it has been quite an enhancement for our town. In 2022, we were able to do pavement restoration to almost 4 miles of roads within our town. We have roughly 45 miles of roads, so that's almost 10% of our roads, which is far and away the most we have done in a calendar year. I am hoping that this council will commit to addressing a flag policy which will enable us to secure a three-pole system at the E.B. Newton site, enabling us to honor all that is important to this town. I will commit to not only continuing to plant more trees to promote a better canopy for our children's future, but to initiate a maintenance program which will serve many open spaces in town. A year ago, I said the following: the decisions that this council will be crafting will be born of a tremendous amount of work, much debate, and undoubtedly some compromise. But ultimately, I am confident that these outcomes will make this great town even better. I know that that is what we have done, and will very soon see the fruits of our labor. I commit with the support of this council to bring before the voters this November an extremely well-thought-out, long-overdue plan to build a new fire station, which would be the first in our community since the late 1800s. We also commit to have a much clearer and articulate plan for the future of the middle school site, which you will hear about in the coming months. There are many things I've learned in my many years on the council. Among them is that experience is a valuable tool, and to define the word quickly in municipal terms is much different than in our day-to-day lives. However, I hope and believe that this council is ready to move forward, work together, agree to disagree at times, but always to agree to put this truly special town first. The will and determination, along with the state of our town, is very strong. Thank you. General information and recommendations, we have none. Public hearings, we have none. Public comments, I am sure we have some. We did have a letter, but Bill is here, but we had a letter from Bill Schmidt. Do you have it written there? Oh, were you going to read it, or do you?
No.
There was a letter from Bill Schmidt that came to the council this afternoon, I think, that gave his thoughts and reflections on the ORC that will be coming before us later this evening, and I'm sure there will be time to comment again. Are there any other correspondence?
We want to comment on the email letter from Mika and the tour we took.
Yes, we did get an email from a constituent that had some concerns on, some in terms of striping on parking spaces and how people were kind of taking advantage of some spaces that weren't actual spaces. And Betsy Lane from the Chamber, our DPW Director, myself, Councilor Aiello, met with this extremely kind woman, and we walked through the whole center with her. The DPW Director, again, was with us, and she made a lot of good points, which we will be bringing up some issues that we will probably send to ordinance, rules and ordinance for some potential changes, not necessarily in what we had voted on, but just in a lot of little areas that just seem to be very ambiguous and we need to address further. And I thank her for those comments.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I got some correspondence about, once again, a crosswalk on Revere Street. It's pretty evident that we're gonna get that crosswalk eventually, but people don't, some constituents do not see why it can't be painted now until the work is done on Revere Street. So just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. Correspondence, committee reports. Into Council Aiello.
We had a kickoff meeting for the new intergovernmental committee. In attendance were not only Councilor Belcher and Councilor Honan, but also Councilor Munson joined us. We basically began with trying to create a mission statement, and we discussed a series of elements of that. We're going to finalize the mission statement for the committee at the next meeting. We also talked about the importance of collaborating with the town council president and the town manager with respect to any intergovernmental communications to make sure, you two run into people all the time, to make sure we're being consistent across the board, so we're getting one message out from there. We talked about a number of interests that the committee would have, and we're going to try to prioritize them and put them in various buckets of priority. And we'll be doing that again at the next meeting. And the next meeting is set for February 28th, I think, something like that. I'll go put it in, hold on a second. But we'll publish it anyway.
Well, there's no February 29th this year.
There's no February 29th, that's
28th it is, at 6 o'clock.
February 28th, I had it right, at 6 p.m. And we will have an agenda out as early as we can for that meeting.
Is that at the Harvey Room?
That'll be at the Harvey Room if it's available, yes.
All right. Thank you. School department report. We had a school committee meeting last Monday. One of the major topics that we talked about was school population, which is great in a lot of ways and concerning in some. I guess our population in our student body is up to 1963, which was not only a great year, but it was it's a big number, which is fantastic. Gorman Fort Banks is at 498 students. The ATC is at 435, the Winthrop Middle School at 423, and the Winthrop High School at 597, which is fantastic. I mean, it was, I want to say about 14 years ago, 13, we had under 100 graduating from Winthrop High School. And last year, I think it was 150-something. And, you know, it seems to be growing, which is fantastic. Now, we have the vocational school opening in a couple of years, which might attract some interest maybe, and potentially, you know, if the population increases by 25%, I think it is, and we have roughly 70 students there, so we could potentially have another 15 or 16 potentially going to the vocational school. But I think this is fantastic for Winthrop. You know, like everything else, it's a blessing and a curse, because you just want to maintain the space. But the school's been doing a fantastic job. The meeting was very good. We talked about a lot of interesting information, talked about test scores and such. And that is it for the school department report. I will turn over to the town manager, Councilor Flockhart.
I was surprised to learn that there were 60 new language learners joining our population. That's quite a large percentage of our students.
It's a huge percentage, and it brings challenges, and it's very rewarding to see these kids learn the language, learn the culture, and that number diminishes as the kids get older, but the number in the younger grades is incredibly high than what we've been used to in the past, the recent past.
Having put out a Spanish language reading program, I did learn that some of these kids that join as language learners join in high school, not able to speak English.
Yeah, the number is lower, but there's definitely, you know, a number that has to be thought about. And it's not just Spanish, it's multiple languages that are coming in, which is, again, it's fantastic for the town. Town manager.
Thank you, Council President. I wanted to thank everybody that attended the MMA. It was a great conference as always. New governor and lieutenant governor over there. We didn't get, usually we get specific where they just took over. Usually we get specific percentages of increase maybe in, you know, state aid for schools and, you know, UGA and, you know, our unrestricted government aid, but they weren't ready to commit to that yet, but they did promise to commit to our schools, our roads, and housing was a big priority, so we had a great meeting. I want to thank all the councilors that attended. It was a great conference, so thank you for that. I did have a meeting with Mike Cabral and our Bill Solomon, who was our attorney we hired to deal with the Comcast contract, so we're getting a capital plan together, and they're gonna reach out to Comcast, and hopefully we get a new contract done in the next couple of months, so I just wanted to put that on the council's radar. We're working on that diligently. One of the things we did finalize is the Labor Council, sorry, not the Labor Council, Town Council rather. We had 5 bids come in. We got it down to 2 finalists. One was a proposal for an in-house council, and the other was a firm. We've chosen to go with the in-house council. The name should be familiar to many. So Jim Simpaletta is going to be our in-house council, town council, moving forward starting on March 1st. He'll work out of the office next door to mine. I thought long and hard about this. You know, Jim's looking to work for another 2 or 3 years. I think it's a good move for the town. We've got a lot coming up with the MBTA zoning, with the housing requirement. We've got to get the Airbnb language in line. We've got all sorts of things we can do with the planning office and ISD, so we've got a lot of different things that are coming up that Jim's got a unique skill set for. He certainly knows our zoning bylaws inside and out, got a lot of experience, and I think this was a good fit for the town. Given, you know, that he's worked in town for a while, there will be a need, we'll have to have some other special counsel. So the second firm has interested in staying on as our special counsel, Mead and Tellerman. So there'll be a special counsel at a rate of $200 an hour, which is a savings down from KMP, and they'll only be available when we need them, you know, certainly not paying a retainer or anything like that. So excited to have that come on board. I've never worked with in-house town council. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good fit, and I certainly has, you know, being a Winthrop resident, I think he's got the, you know, best interest of the town in heart. So certainly outside of the meeting, if any councils want to ask me any questions, I'll certainly be willing to take those calls. But we did get some finalization on that, so I'm looking forward to moving forward. So we also had, sorry, the, where was it? I apologize. train of thought. Oh, I reached out, the council had reached out to me with regard to that, speaking of planning. We did file, Rachel Kelly, our planning director, filed for with the Department of Housing and Community Development, our action plan for the MBTA housing, so we just got a letter today saying that they've approved our action plan, so we'll be all set and ready to go, and that's one of the things we'll get to work on right away. We did switch over, we had a company called Thrive that really wasn't doing too much for us for IT in Town Hall, and everybody else was using Balsam, so what we did was we gave a termination notice to the Thrive, they ended as of today, and then Balsam Technology, which was doing a substantial savings from what Thrive was charging us, will be doing the IT for the town now, as well as they do the schools, fire, police, and health. So we've got one vendor now that does the entire town, so we're moving forward with that.
Sounds.
And other than that, I've also got, before we meet again, Thursday, Boston Harbor Now is doing an award ceremony for anybody who may want to, we got an invite to that. So they're first time they've been able to do that in person, so I'm looking, we've got a lot of stuff going on with the ferry, and we want to certainly keep those networks open. I'll be attending that. And we've also got a S&P ratings call coming up on Thursday, February 9th as well. That's where we do talk about the town, all the good things we have, or, as far as stabilization funds and solid management, and we really push the town to, see if we can at minimum maintain our current rating, but also we want to, see if we can get it up, so, to a higher rating. So that's where we stand. I'm certainly welcome to take any questions.
Councilor Aiello.
Let me begin first with a public note of thanks for, you weren't the only victim of this, but I think over the past year, a number of us were trying to get the utilization of the town lot that sits behind the church and the kids only. And as of today, looks like we're in full compliance. I know that was a difficult journey for you to get to, so I want to say.
Among everything else we're doing, yes.
Among everything else you're doing, but I want to say it's in, when we have standards and codes, it's important to enforce it, and I think that's very good. Let me just double down on a couple of things one that you mentioned, but also that the council president in his State of the Town address did, which is the two policy things that I think are really critical are the Airbnb policy as well as the flag policy, to get those to the council as quickly as we can. I would also say, base it just upon my latest, and I have to say I'm not the best at this, survey of what's available for daily rentals in this town on the various websites is this high. What's officially approved is about this high. There's a lot of violations. I mean, it's rampant in this town.
Yep.
We have to get a conversation with inspectional services to make sure they have the resources.
Yep.
And understand that, there's just great risk to the neighborhoods of having transient dwellers coming in and out of town without any tracking and any understanding. I read a story, I believe it was somewhere down the Cape, and they mentioned that a bunch of towns use outside firms to do the tracking and enforcement and all that stuff, so you don't have to
I've
respond
got some
to it
ideas
now,
on that,
but
yeah.
That might be something to talk about it.
While we were interviewing the firms, that was one of the big things, Jim and I focused on with the Airbnb and ideas they had for that, so yeah.
Okay.
We got some good action moving forward on that.
Great, thank you.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Forgot my question, but I know I have a question.
Too young.
I guess I'll start with the MMA conference. I'm glad you brought it up. I think it's just important, for the community to know that, and, for anyone else who's there, feel free to chime in, but, it's always nice to hear from other cities, towns, neighboring communities. In some areas, I think we're definitely a step ahead, and in some areas, I think, we have some catching up to do, but at the end of the day, you realize that, while we may have some unique issues and quirks and whatever things that make Winthrop special in this town, a lot of what we're trying to do or not trying to do has been tackled elsewhere, and so it's just kind of a nice reminder to hear that every now and then. But I filibustered long enough, and now I remember my question. But is KMP? So what's the current status with KMP, and what's the current status with?
KMP will be on board until the end of the month.
Until the end of the
Yeah,
month.
till the end of the month,
Okay,
and then
got it.
Jim will start on the 1st.
Okay.
And
The
the,
end of the month.
what's that?
The February.
February.
Yeah.
The end of
Yeah,
February.
sorry, February 28th.
Got it.
Jim will start on March 1st. And then I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, sorry. who does our tax title firm, and we also had another firm that did problem properties. It'll come to me in a second. It's
Ambrosia.
Ambrosia, thank you. Ambrosia and Brown. They're going to just do our tax title, and then Jim will take over the problem properties piece of it, and they'll get to a lot of what you're talking about in better enforcement and all that. So, and then for now, we have a separate firm for labor, but I'm looking at that as well, potentially to bring somebody in that I've used before. So,
Council Flockhart.
To echo what the vice president and the town manager says, I thought it was a very good conference. And I know I went to 2 outstanding workshops, but I can only think of one of them right now, and it was on the electricity aggregation, but it was very helpful. I got a lot of good information, and I'll be badgering them.
absolutely. Gotta get moving on that.
Council Munson.
In reference to both your comments and your State of the Town address, I agree. One of our greatest accomplishments of 2022 was to hire Anthony Marino. And when we were at the MMA conference and I was his wingman going through the trade show, wow, did I realize how well known and how accomplished and experienced he was. It couldn't have been 20 feet before the next person said, "Hey, Tony!" And so I think it's great that we have you on board. And I also want to give you a congratulations and a thank you, which I already did via email. But congratulations for the new CFO. Welcome aboard. Thank you very much. So I feel great that we're going in the right direction. And once we get this rules and ordinance and the charter vote done, we can then move on with some of these more expedient issues. I think that we can't do the transient lodging fast enough because there's so many imminent issues. Even the most recent Board of Appeals meeting, there was something like 4 properties being up for bed and breakfast kind of status, which is without having real concrete and current legislation, this could be a wild, wild west of, lodging until we do.
Okay, and I will ask Tony just to give a little update, a little introduction of Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan, if you want to come up for a second, just kind of introduce yourself. Dylan came over from as a Chelsea School business manager. I had some experience in Wellesley on the municipal side as well. We interviewed 3 candidates. Dylan definitely stood out among the 3 candidates, and we're happy to have him on board. So take a second and introduce yourself to the council.
So, obviously, Dylan Cook, so I'm excited to be here. Day 2, everything's good so far. Still got a smile on my face, so that's good. Just really excited to continue to dig in, get up to speed, and hit the ground running.
Well, we thank you and welcome you to Winthrop.
Welcome.
And I do not believe there has been a meeting with the Commission on Diversity,
No, not since our
Inclusion,
last
and
meeting.
Community
No,
Relations.
not yet,
And I do want to, if I have permission from the council, go back to, I think I missed public comment, or it says public comments, and I just kind of blew it over. Because I especially want to have this, because there wouldn't be one till after the ORC recommendation. So we will open up, with the approval of the council, we'll open up public comment. All right, thank you. Now, I know, I'm sure we have somebody,
Wait, there's quick gavel.
Okay, we have Karen Chavez. Karen, you want to unmute, please?
Thank you. Karen Chavez, Precinct 2. First thing I want to comment on is there a mission statement for this new committee that was formed by the council president for this intergovernmental strategies? If so, could you please be posted on the website?
okay.
My other comment is on the ordinance review committee recommendations. I was fortunate enough to be on that committee. We did 40-plus hours of deliberations. The councilors had 10 to 15 hours. I am hoping that the council will just put forth all of our recommendations and let the voters decide what the changes should be. It doesn't seem like the ordinance review and the council can even come to a halfway discussion on this. We all have our different views. I certainly have my views based on how long I've been involved with a council form of government. I hope that you will take this into consideration And please, just put this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public? Yes, Bill, Mr. Schmidt.
I wasn't gonna speak, but I'll differ from Karen respectively. I think,
Just for introduction.
Bill Schmidt, Precinct 5.
Thank you.
I think it's important for the council to exercise their due diligence and the fact that you are elected officials. You talk to people in the town, you've been on the council. I trust your judgment. I think the process is set up in such a way that you do weigh in, and if you think things need to go the way they are, fine. If you think changes should be made, I think you should do that. But you're elected to take positions here, and that's what I hope you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Todd Sacco? Do you want to unmute, Todd?
Thank you very much. Todd Sacco, Precinct 2. I too want to echo a little bit of Karen's sentiment in that I want to thank the council for all the work that they have done. I do think we might have put in more than 40 hours all told. If you add up all the people who are part of it, you're actually talking in excess of 500 volunteered hours on our side, just on the ORC side of this work. And yes, you guys are a representative government, but I have to correct Mr. Schmidt. And those of you who think that because you're a representative government, you should actually make this decision for the community. Here's what I mean. I understand all of your concerns, and while I disagree with your approach, here's why. You will get a chance to vote on the final product in the election, okay? But how can any of you know whether or not the town in majority wants a president for 4 years versus 2 years? When you think about your representative government, you're elected, yes, to vote on some of the bigger things. However, when it comes to things like taxes, you don't get to vote on that. And when you think about, you are voting on something that is us governing you. So you are taking away from the people our ability to govern that council. Not you as individuals, but as a council. You don't know that 50% of the town doesn't want 4 years for a president, and you don't know that more than 50% of the town doesn't want 2 years for the councilors. You just don't know that, and you're making that decision for them. And when you think about government of, for, and by the people, that is what this is about. I get that the charter is silent on this issue. I get it. I get it says you can weigh in, and you should, and I think you guys did very good work for the most part. But if you disassemble this thing, you disincentivize people from never doing this again. I mean, what's the point of having an ORC committee if you're gonna change it completely? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
No, we're good.
Okay, we'll go back to old business. We'll take them a little out of order, just to kind of clean up. Trash ordinance, we still waiting for some feedback.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the final numbers. I'll have something for the next meeting. We're doing a presentation with regard to totals and all the financial information you wanted, so we'll have that for the
So
meeting
we'll
on the
keep that
21st.
on for the next meeting.
Can we post, are we ready to post a public hearing for the next meeting?
I think that's what we talked about, right?
That's
Yep.
what I
We had
figured.
already,
Yeah,
yeah.
21st, yep.
Okay, cool.
And thank you for the feedback from everybody that, Joe and others that have kept back to us, so appreciate it.
Committee handbook,
That's still in committee. We were waiting for feedback from committee chairs. We'll be meeting soon to go over that, and hopefully at a time that a lot of committee chairs can attend the next meeting.
all right. Now we'll go to the ordinance review committee recommendations. So the plan tonight is, we've had multiple public hearings, multiple discussion, we've had an inordinate amount of input from citizens, which is great. So our responsibility at some point, and now is the point, is to vote to see what we would recommend. There were different thoughts from the ORC. Some concern the charter, some concern ordinances. Again, the ordinances, I think for the most part, are probably going to be referred to rules and ordinance. We feel that they're pretty good ideas, especially like Airbnb and use variances and such. So I think what I'd like to do is handle all of them, but let's go through the charter changes and get information and the vote on each. Each vote will be taken by a roll call. Any vote eventually will require 6 yes votes to go forward. And again, to go forward means, for the most part, to go to the state for approval, and then to come back to go to the residents in November for a vote. Any of these proposed changes can be amended during our conversations tonight. They would just need a second. The amendment would be voted on, and then the change would be voted on with the amendment. Any counselor has the ability to create a new motion, if so chose, on any subject. So we'll start at number 1, which is usually a good place. So the recommendation number 1 from the ORC, which again, and you know, they've thanked us for giving them the opportunity to do this, and I will thank them, along with the council, for putting in an incredible amount of time and effort and well-thought-out suggestions. The suggestions are agreed and disagreed by people, which is what everything's all about, right? If everything was agreed by everybody, we'd have very short meetings. And so anyway, I do thank the Ordinance Review Committee and Mark Chapdelaine, the chair especially, for the effort that they put in and the time that they put in. It is very much appreciated by this council and by this town. So recommendation number 1, the ORC recommends sending to the voters at Winthrop a recommendation to change the size, terms, and composition of our town council. Currently, the town council is comprised of 6 precinct councilors, 2 at-large councilors, and a council president. The current term is staggered in 4-year terms and a 2-year term for the council president. The ORC recommends a reduction in size of the town council to 7. Under the recommendation, the precinct designation would be removed. All councilors would be at large, so there would be 6 councilors at large and a council president. Now the length, is that a separate question, or is that all part of
This
it?
was the ABC.
Yeah. Also, in under 1 was that the lengths of the terms of the councilors would go to 2 years for all councilors and 4 years for the council president. They're rationalizing the shortness and length of the precinct councilors will result in increased participation. The increase in length of the term of the council president is intended to give the council president the time needed to achieve goals. So I believe we had agreed to break this up into A, B, and C, with A being the composition of the council. So I guess the recommendation is to change the composition of the councilors from 6 precinct, 2 at large, and 1 council president, to 6 at large and 1 council president. So that is the recommendation. Do we have a motion for that recommendation to put it on the table to discuss it? Motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco. So the motion is on the table. Discussion, we could go by hands, or we could start with the vice president. Well, we could go around the table, I mean, but I don't want to pick
You're on
on
the
you,
spot.
but
Oh, sure.
If you have, there's no, you don't need to make a.
I have an opinion on all of these, as I served on the Charter Review Commission, and then we took this up again in the Rules and Ordinance Subcommittee, and then we talked about it a few times here, so I don't mind commenting, obviously. So 1A, just talking specifically about 1A, reducing the size of the council by 2 and making it all at large. I think, and I've said this, throughout all the debates on this is actually creating a less representative government. We're quite literally reducing the number of touch points that people have with their elected officials. Furthermore, if you look around the state, you don't have to go too far. You can go right next door to Revere. They're debating Right now, I think they're actually pretty close to finalizing it, making their school committee a district-represented school committee because it's more representative. So they currently have an at-large school committee, and they're debating going in the opposite direction of Winthrop. The city of Lowell lost a lawsuit because they had an all-at-large city council. They lost in court saying that that was not representative, and they had to go to a hybrid model like we have right now. So as I referenced earlier during our talks at the MMA, you know, sometimes we got it right. And I think this is one where we've got it right, and I don't want to see us take a step back. So I'll leave my comments there, and I'm sure there's going to be more discussion on this.
Any comment on this? And again, I will also open it up if anybody wants to make a potential amendment to this too. Councilor Aiello?
I agree with the Vice President. I think this notion should be rejected for all the reasons he cited. I think it actually makes it more difficult for people to think about running in representative when they have to cover the entirety of the town. So I'm in the same boat, and I would reject A for those reasons.
Councilor DeMarco?
So honestly, I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's you know, this is something that I believe that the people of the town should decide how they want to be represented. When I think about the town and how many counselors we have, like I think maybe stepping back and having 7 as opposed to 9 might not be a bad idea. Might make more things get done. At the same time, when I think about precincts, I think about Winthrop as being 1.5 square miles, maybe 2, tops. How many precincts can you break up in that? I will say this, Councilor Belcher, I do think the Point is a unique area of the town. Okay, I think they have different views and different. I get that, but I mean, precinct 2 and precinct 5 could be the same. You know what I mean? Like I said, this town is 2 miles. I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, wouldn't you rather have 6? I mean, me personally, I'd rather have 6 people to go to as opposed to 1 precinct counselor. So I think in that way it makes sense, but I don't know, because I do know that there is a power, or you know, there's something to going to your precinct counselor to say, hey, you know what, I don't like this, and there's a familiarity with that, and it feels good, and you know you have somebody who has your back. I get that. That's why I'm completely on the fence on this.
Councilor Belcher?
Thank you. First, I'd just like to say that if the council votes to not move things forward, it's not to discredit the work of the ORC. I think they did incredible work, and it's important to look at things through all angles, and sometimes you see that you could improve, but sometimes you see that you have gotten things right. So I just want to put that out there. As far as this one goes, I think it's important to remember that representative government isn't about square mileage, it's about people. And it's important that the residents have someone to go to. There's a clear division of responsibilities across the town. Like Councilor DeMarco mentioned, Precinct 3 has some very unique issues, and I would hate to see their representation get pushed away. Also, like Vice President Ruggiero mentioned, in Lowell, this got struck down when they went to all-at-large, so I think that this is a slippery slope as far as voter rights and representation goes.
Councilor Munson?
I mean, I think that I'm leaning towards everyone's point of view towards representation matters, and I think it's only fair to say that it's our job, as per the charter, to actually voice our opinions. So while the ORC did a phenomenal job and are going to inevitably affect great change to this town to make it a better, more functioning government because of the suggested changes, it doesn't mean that we should all just lay down all of our opinions and our better judgment for the town as a whole so that they can have their suggested changes all go through to the town's people. This actual charter has specifically requested during charter review changes for the town council to review it and to vote on it. So for me to not put my voice out there and not put my opinion out there is asking me to not do my job. So I am going to say that I believe that reducing the number of town councilors is not good. It's not fixing a problem, and I believe that representation matters. I have at least 5 conversations currently with my constituents about specific issues to Precinct 2, so I would have to say I agree with all of those opposed to 1A.
And not to skip you, but I'm just gonna go in order. So
of course,
Councilor Fusillo, do you have any comments on this?
Nothing to add at this time, thank you.
Councilor Honan?
No, I agree with what's been said in regards to the lacking representation and taking away representation. I believe it's regressive, and I don't think that's where Winthrop should be heading.
So, Councilor Flockhart?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have passed. I believe that the committee that was appointed did an excellent job, but they are an advisory committee, and I appreciate all the work they did to present these ideas to us so that we could really examine this. But it's our job to say yes or no. And I think it would be a mistake to eliminate the precinct counselors. I've lived in this town for over 30 years. I realize that that's not a long time for most Winthropites, but in that 30 years, I have not really gotten to know all parts of the town as well as I know Precinct 4. So I think running at large would have been a disservice.
And what I'll say on this is, it seems, listen to everyone's comments, other than Councilor Munson made this point, but other than Councilor Munson, every argument seemed to stem around the representation of the at-large versus the precinct. Councilor Munson brought up the size, but nobody else did. I would, again, I have my concerns with this, but again, I am going to vote to put everything towards, for the council, to the public, even though, you know, it's not my personal agreement on a couple of them, but I'm gonna throw the gavel to Council Vice President Ruggiero for 1 second and like to make a motion.
I just have a question
Okay.
before you do that. Has KP reviewed this for sort of like the constitutionality of any or all of these changes? Do we have an opinion?
We don't have a specific opinion on each. We got an opinion on the one we wanted in terms of the,
No, I
you know,
understand
the other
that.
thing.
on the
But, and that's the
comprehensive
purpose of then going, that's the stopgap, right? The checkpoint to go to the State House to make sure.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we're working off of, you know, our thoughts and opinions at this point.
Right.
And so I just wanted to make sure that,
Mhm.
I'm not sure how they would feel about,
Right, it depends. You
all
could,
these,
you
right,
could
yeah.
vote to put something forward and it could come back with,
Sure.
you know, we don't feel that this is in the best interest of the representation of the town. But I will throw the gavel over to you and just like to be recognized to make an amendment.
there's a motion coming from Council President Lettieri. I will hear the motion.
So I will just make an amendment to the motion to, you know, give the ORC the benefit of the doubt with their numbers. And I think they were looking at changing the numbers to, I think their end game was admirable. They're looking to try to get more contested elections and it seems to be, this doesn't look like it has 6 votes by everyone's comments. So I will make an emotion because it seemed that all the arguments led around precinct versus at large. So I guess I would make the motion to keep the ORC recommendation, but to change it from, you know, keep their recommendation from 9 to 7, but I would say 6 precinct councilors and 1 council president. So this kind of, to me, is a motion that, from listening to every councilor here, every argument was made stemmed around the representation from, you know, they felt that, you know, your precinct needed representation. So this eliminates that problem. So I just make an amendment that keep the ORC recommendation, but instead of going to 6 all at large, go to 6 precinct.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Belcher. Is there any discussion on the motion? Counselor Honan.
So that's still taking away 2 counselors?
It is, which is the, you know, and again, I was just giving, I'm not saying I even agree, I'm just saying to try to get something so that they would have some relevance to go to the voters. I'm saying that the thought process behind, I think, 1A, B, C, and a couple others is to get more, you know, looking at the races, you look at, you know, there's roughly 80% of races that are unopposed. And I think the thought process is to try to get more, you know, and I respect that it is nice to try to get more. It does limit, right? You're going from, we were at 3 selectmen, we went to 9, and now this would be reducing it, right? Which is very worthy point to say you feel that 9 is a good number. I'm just saying to try to give their motion some clarity and try to address the major concerns that seem to be here. Totally understand your argument that you still feel it's
Still less
lessening the
less
representation.
yeah.
So that's all. I was just trying to make an amendment to make it more pliable or acceptable.
Counselor Belcher.
Thank you. I think that's a really good compromise to what the ORC put forward and the feedback we've given so far. My only question is, does this really solve the issue of uncontested races? Like, I think the at-large seats are also largely uncontested. So I don't know that shrinking would really solve that problem. And the way I see it is, if it's not gonna solve a problem, there's kind of no real teeth to warrant the change.
Counselor Aiello. Oh. Counselor Flockhart.
Well,
Counselor Aiello. Counselor.
Let you go first. Okay. Yeah, I would say that the design of the precinct councils plus the at-large is, I think, an elegant design that provides local focus for some, townwide focus for others. Not that I don't like change, I certainly think that there's a lot of change that needs to happen in the world. But I think that doesn't, the amendment as proposed doesn't really solve any particular problem.
Counselor Flockhart.
I think that if we go down to 6, that means that each of the counselors has more work. So it's a more daunting task. And I'll leave it at that. I think 9 is a good number.
And don't get me wrong, first of all, I helped write the charter, so I appreciate the fact that you think we did such a good job. So
Yes,
I'm
I
just
do.
trying to make an amendment that makes
Yeah.
it more acceptable to try to address the concerns that almost everybody had. So you could vote on the amendment.
Yeah, I'll just say on this one, I think, like I said earlier, we're reducing, I can participate.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're reducing the number of touch points. That's sort of what I referenced the first time. We're still doing that here. You know, it's simple division, 18,000 divided by 9, 18,000 divided by 7 or 6, or whatever we're proposing. Yeah, I guess that's all I have on that. Is there any further debate?
Can I say move the amendment?
Okay.
Move the amendment.
A motion by Counselor Aiello to move the amendment. I'll call for a roll call vote on the amendment only.
Right.
Second.
Yeah,
Seconded.
it's already
Sorry.
been seconded, yeah.
Counsel Honan,
No.
Counsel Fusillo,
Yes.
Counsel Munson,
No.
Counsel Belcher,
No.
Counsel DeMarco,
Abstain.
Counsel Flockhart,
No.
Counsel Aiello,
No.
Vice President Ruggiero,
No.
President Lettieri.
Yes. All right,
Noes
thank
have it.
you for that. So now we'll go back and we will vote on the original motion, which would be to bring to the town a change in composition of the town council from 9 members to 7. 6 would be at large, 1 would be the council president. Seeing no further discussion, and this would require 6 yes votes to pass. Roll call, please.
Counsel Honan,
No.
Counsel Fusillo,
Yes.
Council Munson,
No.
Council Belcher,
No.
Councilor DeMarco,
Yes.
Councilor, Councilor Flockhart,
No.
Councilor Aiello,
Nope.
Vice President Ruggiero,
No.
President Lettieri.
Yes. So that does not pass. I just do with my. So now we will go to 1B. Should the term of the town council president be changed from two-year term to a four-year term? This is a motion, came out with a positive recommendation from the ORC. Discussion on this motion. I won't go around, I'll just ask any discussion. So we're not here till 1 in the morning.
I guess go first. I voted against this twice now, but, you know, I think what this is kind of breaching the topic of is having a stronger executive branch of our government, which we intentionally do not have. You know, this is not a mayoral system. We didn't have that discussion in the ORC. Maybe that is a discussion that needs to be had at some point, not now, not 5 years, not 10 years, who knows? But we have, you know, every other city council that I can think of has the council president serving, you know, in lockstep with everyone else. We have this hybrid style government where our council president position has a little bit extra power and we hold that person a little bit extra responsible by making them up for election every 2 years. Again, I think this is something that we had right, that maybe some other cities and towns don't, and they're trying to figure it out, so why should we fix something that might not be broken?
Any other discussion? Councilor Belcher?
Thank you. I agree with Council Vice President Ruggiero. I think that we got this one right again the first time when the charter was written. The council president position is a lot more transparent. You can tell the direction of the council, what's getting done. You see a lot more stuff in the public-facing view. So in 2 years, you can kind of tell if you like the way the council's moving. I think this keeps accountability strong. I think it puts some pressure on the president to move things along quickly. So I think the 2-year term is solid. That's also in conjunction with the 4-year council term. These two are kind of hard to untangle, but as it stands, I think the 2-year term is correct for the president.
Council DeMarco?
So I think it's very important to look at this because I think a lot of these are tied together, whether it's the term of the president versus the term of the people who are on the council. It's very hard to say, like, you know, and we'll get into this when we come to the recall language as well. It's like, is the person serving 2 years or is he serving 4 years? We don't know right now at this point. So just keep that in mind. Like, whether it's a 4-year term is a lot different than a 2-year term. Yeah, I mean that's all I got to say. That's it.
Councilor Aiello?
I agree with the perspective that Councilor Belcher has on this. I think that, again, I think that the designers of the system got it quite right. And I also think that the 2-year term really does force us to sort of really accelerate. You know, under your leadership or anybody's leadership, you got 2 years, you want to get things done, you want to go back before the voters. I like that pace. I like to keep that pace of getting at urgent problems as quickly as we can.
Anybody else? Councilor Fusillo, did you have anything?
No, nothing to
Okay.
add, thank you.
It's hard for me to talk on this. As I said before, I'm going to vote in favor of the recommendations pretty much across the board, but I don't know what the right answer is here. I'd like to say we got it right again at the beginning, and I think I think that, you know, it's been 17 years now, and there hasn't been any substantive changes. And I used to get upset about that, saying, oh, there were so many things when you think. It's like going into a store and saying, oh, if I had a gift certificate, I'd buy everything. Then you have a gift certificate, and you're like, oh, there's nothing to buy. And it's kind of like this. It's like I've thought about so many changes over the years, and I'm like, you know what? It's really a pretty well-written document. And but I will say on this, it is difficult, and I mentioned it in the State of the Town address on how, you know, the word quickly in municipal language is so much different than everybody else's language, because nothing gets done quickly. As much as we've been trying and working, and hopefully this council, we are gonna bring some stuff, some change over the next few months to the town, or some recommendations, but it is hard to get things done, and when you're doing a 2-year term, whatever it happens to be for, you know, it takes a good 10 months to a year to get comfortable a lot of times, before people are really speaking up and feeling comfortable about it, and then it's like, you know, halfway through that second year, you're running again, if you choose to. And you know, the big winners, I guess, in the 2-year terms are the sign makers in the local papers, right, for the advertising costs. But I will be voting yes for this in this forum. I don't know if it went to the voters how I would vote. So there, we will ask for, if nobody else has any other, I'll ask for a roll call vote. So this is 1B. This is, should the council president term be changed from 2 years to 4?
Ready? Council Honan.
No.
Council Fusillo.
Yes.
Council Munson.
Yes.
Council Belcher.
No.
Council DeMarco.
Yes.
Council Flockhart.
No.
Council Aiello.
No?
Vice President Ruggiero.
No.
President Lettieri.
Yes. So that does not pass. We will go to recommendation 1C. Should the term of the councilors, excluding town council president, be changed from 4 years to 2 years? And again, I think that the thought here is that you're going to get people that are willing to make a commitment for 2 that might not make a commitment for 4, and then you would see an increase. I think all these were trying to get an increase. I don't know how from going to 2 to 4 is an increase in participation, but the thought, I think, here is to get more participation. The big concern here is that, you know, right now you have 5 people running every 2 years, and we don't have participation. I don't know how people think that 9 people running every 2 years, you would have participation, but I will leave it. I'm not gonna pick on Councilor Ruggiero now. Whoever has a thought, Councilor Munson.
I believe in this. It would have affected me, and I think it'll affect other people, parents of young children, people that don't necessarily want to commit to 4 years because they can't foresee the future, but they still want to help their town. I think that the 2-year term would increase participation. There is the fear of having a full shuffle, if you will, of town councilors any given 2 years, but the chances are so slim that we would have a completely new council. And while there is a chance, and it may seem an unstable government to have all brand-new councilors, I don't necessarily think that we can't give people a step up in the ability to contribute to the town in short order by providing a nice on-ramping process, a nice training ground. We had KMP giving us kind of the groundworks when we first arrived. And yes, it's true, it takes a while to kind of get up to speed, but it doesn't mean that you can't vote and contribute to the town right away. So I think that 2 years is valuable, and I think you'll get more people to participate.
Councilor Flockhart.
I initially thought maybe this was a good idea, but the 4 years is a daunting commitment. However, I did feel that it took me at least a year to get up and understand what I was doing here. And so I think that the 4-year term is really necessary in order to get us fully functioning.
Councilor Aiello?
I agree with Councilor Flockhart.
Councilor DeMarco.
So, I'm actually gonna agree with both you and John. The learning curve is big. I mean, it did, you know, a year isn't even it. I mean, we're still learning, we're still going. At the same time, like, you know, 4 years versus 2 years, I mean, I think the people who want to, I think the people who want to represent Winthrop care so much about this town that it really doesn't matter whether it's 2 or 4 years. That's just my opinion. I mean, I'm gonna. This is something that should go to the voters. This is a no-brainer. I think that should go to the voters. Let them decide what they want their government represented. So.
Yeah, do you have something else? Council Belcher.
Thank you. Of the 3 suggestions, I think this one has the most merit on both sides. I know how I feel. I think the 4-year term is solid, but I also think that there are some very valid arguments for 2 years, so I think that this is one that I would like to see what the people want.
And, Councilor Aiello.
Again, this is on the borderline for me. I like the design because I like the way that every 2 years there's sort of a gradual shifting around the way it's designed today. I don't know if I want to make a formal, if I have to make a formal amendment, I could ask for a discussion. One possibility could be to split the baby, right? To say that if you're gonna run to represent your precinct, which is an easy place to campaign, a relatively easy place to understand your constituents and develop relationships, that you do that for 4 years. But if that's daunting, perhaps we make the at-larges for 2 years, right? That's a little bit more difficult for the campaign. But someone could go in for 2 years and decide they like it and want to run again, et cetera. We might be able to sort of cut it in half, but I don't know how others feel. Maybe I got it the wrong way in terms of it, but I'd be happy to have a discussion around.
You know, I will say that,
that possibility.
I think this is one that I don't see much merit at all in the 2 years for the whole council. I just think, and some people haven't even been here for a half cycle like we're coming into now. If you have 9 people, and, you know, I agree with Councilor Munson, the chances of turning over everything is relatively small, but not out of the question. And just in a regular cycle, so now you're gonna have, potentially, I mean, some people might choose not to run or whatever, but potentially you have, you know, 5 people running for reelection. And you have 4 people that are here just so relaxed come this summer and fall when everybody else is running around doing, and they're relaxed and they're into it and they're, you know, going about their business. To have 9 people saying, oh, did I put an ad in the paper? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do a council meeting? Do I have, it's daunting. And let alone the work on our esteemed town clerk with the nomination papers and the validation of signatures and such. But, and that's a whole, you know, Councilor Aiello spoke about a point in terms of, my God, senior moment. You just said it.
Too young for that.
Spoke.
Not that young.
Well, my point is that, you just spoke on a possible amendment and try to split the baby. Another thing that could be discussed, kind of not in this same thing, in this same vein, but to maybe you lessen the number of signatures to get, because that's sometimes daunting for people that they just don't want to do that. So that's another thing to make it more attractive. I do think 4 years, you're making a commitment to the town, and I think it's worthy of the 4 years. I really think, you know, if we were truly a town and have the ability to have elections in the spring, it's a different thing. I think 3 years is the ideal number, right? And some people might be saying, well, why aren't they saying 3 years? 3 years is the perfect, you know, alternative, right? We don't have that ability. We have to have elections on even numbered years. So it's odd numbered years, sorry. So we're having an election on odd numbered years. So it has to be 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever it happens to be. But I just think the possibility, even if it is remote, to have 9 counselors up and 9 counselors either turning over or just the fact 9 counselors running a campaign, which is, you know, a half a year commitment basically to do. I just think it really boggles down the council in so many ways. I would be interested to hear if Councilor Ayala wanted to make if you chose to make an amendment. I don't even know, we've been listening to things, I don't know if this is passing or not passing, so.
I would draw that.
Okay, so there is a, you know, that is, you're trying to look, and I tried to do the same thing with one, trying to look for some sort of, because I think there are a lot of town members that say, I want to vote on this. I have a different thought, and, you know, we could talk about things back and forth, and somebody else might say something that we never even thought of and said, wow, you know what? That is a good reason to have 2 years. But anyway, so we are on 1C. 1C is to excluding the council president to the terms of the councilors should be changed from 4 years to 2 years. Seeing no other, I will ask, so this will require 6 yes votes. 6 yes votes would put on the ballot the opportunity for the town to vote to change the term from 4 years to 2 years. Roll call, please.
Council Honan,
No?
Council Fusillo,
Yes.
Council Munson,
Yes.
Council Belcher,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
No.
Council Aiello,
No.
Vice President Ruggiero,
No.
President Lettieri,
We at 4-4 right now? Yes. So I'm gonna vote yes for everything. So this does not pass.
5-4.
Okay.
Yeah, you need 6.
No, it does not pass. You need to
We need 6.
Recommendation number 2. Now, this should be easier. The council, the ORC is recommending that the abandonment language in section 2.1 be changed from missing more than half of the meetings over a 1-year period to either 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings at the full council, or by failing to appear at 50% of the regularly scheduled meetings for a full council over a 3-month period. So this basically, very simple, says right now in the charter, it says that in order for somebody to be considered abandonment of their post, they would have to miss 6 months plus 1 of a calendar year. So literally, a councilor could not go to a meeting in January, February, March, April, May, and half of June, and go to the rest of the meetings and still be considered a full councilor. And I think that's something that we missed early on, and maybe something that we just never thought would be an issue and kind of just threw it out there to throw something out there or copy and paste it. But I think this is very good. It's not daunting. Again, you're running for a position for a town-wide office or a precinct office to represent your town. I think the thought is that you would be able to attend most of the meetings. And this is just regularly scheduled council meetings. These are not subcommittee meetings. Any discussion on this? Council Vice President Ruggiero.
I'm in favor of this one. I think this actually solves a problem. I think one of the biggest criticisms of the council over the years has been, or was attendance and engagement. I think this solves for that. So I think that's exactly what it does. It holds us accountable. I also just want to note that there's a clause in here that, for the folks that may be thinking like, oh, I may be in danger of this for whatever reason, there's also a clause in here where the council could overturn this. So if there is a personal issue, illness, job, work-related, then, that is solved for within this, and the council can overturn this section here, but I'm in support of this one.
Council Honan.
So that's part of the recommendation?
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a clause for.
If you go to.
There is, if you go to the back when it's more written out, it talks about, you know, the ability of the council, kind of like the 3-minute public
Yeah.
comment period.
If
The
somebody
council
has
can
cancer
admit-
and they're out,
God
they miss.
forbid, yeah.
Good, okay. Thank you.
I would like to make a move to
Councilor
vote.
Just before the move, just a question of clarification. Is the Zoom policy a permanent policy?
No.
It's not.
Just through April right now.
It's what?
Through April, they haven't had final legislation on that
They
yet.
haven't done it.
They
yet.
did
Okay.
another temporary
All right. I mean, that
approval.
would be nice to have, but not necessary. Okay.
There's a, Vice President's gonna read up
No,
on
it
it.
just, if the office is abandoned, it shall be deemed vacant, an allowance for an exemption to this rule may be granted by a 2/3 vote of a majority of the full body of the council. So it doesn't even give reasons why, but I think there are personal things that we're each dealing with that doesn't need to become public, but, you know, the way I would see this is, you know, maybe during an executive session, that can be discussed, and then a vote of 2/3 could be taken to overturn this. Sorry.
Okay, there's a motion to move the question. I will ask for a roll call vote, and this will change the abandonment clause.
Council Honan,
Yes.
Council Fusillo,
Yes.
Council Munson,
Yes.
Council Belcher,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
Yes.
Council Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. I'd like to ask, if we can right now, if the council agrees, that we pause for a minute, go to new business. We have some people here that are just waiting for an item that we might be able to just, because new business is gonna be pretty quick, and we could come right back. We're gonna have to do new
Motion
business
to
anyway.
suspend the rules.
All right, there's a motion to suspend council rules and take new business out of order. There's a second by Councilor Flockhart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Let's go back, pause the ORC for a minute. We're gonna go to new business. And we are going to, the council's gonna vote to appropriate $143,900 water retained earnings to pay for Revere Street PRV project. Director Calla, would you like to speak on this?
Sure, so this request is for the design and engineering contract, to, put that project together. We've already voted on the SRF funding, which would pay for the construction, construction administration and any police details.
Mhm.
But this is for the design and engineering phase.
Okay, and we are gonna move this to finance. There's another new business item to vote to appropriate $69,989.04 for a monitoring and compliance module. This would be a gas fob, basically, so we have a really good track of the cars that are going to the DPW to use the gas, and we would have a good tracking system, and it's something that's kind of required too. And so this will also be moved to finance. We have town council to vote $6,000 from finance department, $4,800 from conservation salary line to the Board of Appeals salary line. This will also be moved to finance. Vote to approve and amend code of ordinance for wetlands. This will go to a joint committee, probably of ordinance, rules and ordinance and finance, because it involves a fee, a fine. So we will move that to a joint committee. We also we're asking for the MBTA Winthrop bus routes changes and improvements. We're trying to get, with the help of Councilor Aiello, and I know that the town manager and Denise is also on board with this, to try to get us a representative from the MBTA to come in and talk to us about the current bus routes, and we're talking more in the center area and stuff, and, you know, we've had issues with, especially the Herman Street route, and we're trying to get someone to come in to discuss this. So we're gonna do that in the future, but would you have?
I'll work with Tony.
Okay. All right, and this is part of your committee.
Councilor Belcher.
Yes. Send this to Intergovernmental Relations Committee.
IGN. That's so much better.
Also now,
Got a new, item on new business. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
We have we talked about this at the last meeting, and we talked a few years back about a Complete Street Policy Committee. And the Complete Streets Committee, by rule, is going to include the town manager or his or her designee, director of public works or his or her designee, police chief or safety officer or designee, the fire chief or designee, director of health department or designee, school superintendent or designee, executive director of the COA or designee. So there's left 2 positions. I have reached out, I have one person that is interested that I know of right now, and I would like to make a motion to appoint Julia Wallace to this committee. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Second by Councilor Belcher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. So I still have one position to fill. I am still looking for applicants, and hopefully we'll have another appointment at a subsequent meeting. And there also is a motion in that the order of town council passed on June 21st, 2022, authorized a borrowing in the amount of $2,912,000 for a water main project is hereby amended to increase the authorization borrowing amount of the project to $4,890,101, with amended order shall read as the following. Ordered that the town appropriate the sum of $4,890,101 to pay the cost of constructing and reconstructing water mains on Revere Street, Crest Ave, and Grovers Ave, including all costs incidental related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the town manager, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 8, Paragraph 5, and/or Mass General Law, Chapter 29, Section C. And this is going on. We're going to refer this to finance, but I would like to ask the DPW director to explain this.
Sure. So as we know, this project along Revere Street is critical to get us prepped for our upcoming TIP project. We had a bid opening last Wednesday, and bids came in substantially higher than the authorized amount, primarily due to increased material costs, the need to do a majority of this project at night because of that corridor, not to affect the school in and out, in the business district. So we went back to DEP. DEP agreed to accept an application for an increase in funds, but required us to add 10% contingency to our low bidder amount, which is what all these new numbers are based on. We had, is the low bidder, which was Cardillo and Son, was the company. And then the remaining funds still have to cover construction administration, which is a requirement of the SRF program, and police details are built into that as well. So what that number that you have in front of you is the low bid plus a 10% contingency per DEP, plus the police detail and public and construction administration. That said, it doesn't mean that we're gonna necessarily spend that 10% contingency. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily gonna spend all that police detail money. The construction administration is a contracted amount that you will spend, and then obviously the cost to do the project. But that number is what is needed for DEP to consider increasing their prior SRF allocation.
This will be referred to finance. I'm sure it will have a lot of discussion and more detailed information there. So I will refer this to finance. Now, it's like coming back from a commercial break.
Since we are having a break.
Well, we're not having a break.
I'm asking, is it all right if I go have a break?
You can have a break whenever you choose. All right.
Quick, vote while he's gone.
We will start discussion on the following. I'm sure Council Munson will be back. We are on recommendation number 3. Should multiple member bodies, example, Board of Licensing or Planning Board, be required to nominate and/or elect or re-elect a chairperson, and I believe vice chair also, right? As a first order of business at the first meeting date.
That's
it
in the
a vice-
committee handbook, I don't know that it
Yeah,
came
I
out
don't
in
think it made
minutes.
it to the
Okay.
ORC,
All right.
but
The committee handbook does lay out that you need to elect a vice chair.
the draft.
The draft.
This isn't something that needs to go to the state either, is it?
It is? Yeah, it's a charter change,
Yeah.
yes. How did I end up skipping to that one?
I think it's just,
Is that, am I on the right number?
Number 3?
it's recommendation number 3.
But I have recommendation number 3 as a different one here. Yeah, so this would, again, basically what this is doing is giving the multiple member bodies an opportunity to elect their own chair, which I think is a very good idea. I think what has happened in the past is you've had, council presidents appoint chairs, and that has not gone over well, and it should be the body itself appointing its own chair. So that's the recommendation from the ORC. And I will ask for any comments on this.
Yeah.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Generally, yeah, I'm in favor of this.
This also passed 9-0
This
with the ORC.
passed 9-0, it passed 3-0 in subcommittee. There is, I believe that some of the policy-making multiple member bodies have some rules that are governed by the state law as opposed to the town charter. So before this gets on the ballot, I just want to make sure that
The language.
the language is appropriate and it's not conflicting with state law. I guess that's the state legislature's job, potentially, when and if it gets there, but I just want to make that point because this is sort of like a conditional vote, obviously, just making sure that we're not violating anything else, but, so, supporting, hopefully.
And this is where we have to make sure that the language is adequate, and this is one of the things when it goes to the next step, which would be the State House, that they would hopefully weigh in on. But on the surface, I think the thought and the process is correct, and it's something.
Yeah, and just on the content itself, I think it's hard enough sometimes to ask folks to volunteer and get involved on some of these boards, but shouldn't make it harder once they're on there, and they should be able to elect their own leader, so.
Any other discussion on recommendation number 3? Seeing none and seeing Council Munson is back, we will be asking for a roll call vote to vote on the ability of multiple member bodies that are allowable under state law to elect their own chair. Question?
Yeah, you made a pretty good point earlier about a vice chair. I don't think that's included in the.
It is not, you can make an amendment.
Yeah, I don't know if there'd be an appetite to do that, but,
Second.
yeah, I'll make the
All
motion.
right, there's an
to
amendment
include a vice
made
chair as
by
well.
Vice President Ruggiero to add the word after chair, and a comma would be and vice chair.
Vice chair. Thank you.
So this would be the allow and direct, basically, not just allow, to direct them, because, and this has come up because there's been situations where the chair, it's happened, it's ongoing right now, where the chair has left and there was not a person to take over, which then put me in the position to name an acting
Right.
chair until that committee is full and can name their own chair, so.
Solving a problem.
That's right. So we're amending this, there's an amendment to this motion to include vice chair, and it was made by Vice President Ruggiero. It was seconded by Councilor Aiello. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll ask for a roll call vote on the amendment.
Council Honan.
Yes.
Council Fusillo.
Yes.
Council Munson.
Yes?
Council Belcher.
Yes.
Council DeMarco.
Yes.
Council Flockhart.
Yes.
Council Aiello.
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, now we will go back to the motion as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, ask for a roll call vote.
Council Honan.
No.
No?
I'm very confused.
So we're voting on the motion now as amended.
As amended, sorry, okay, yes, sorry.
Council Picello,
Yes.
Council Munson,
Yes.
Council Belcher,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
Yes.
Council Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. Now, recommendation number 4 is an ordinance change, and I think it's really important, but I think I want to at least get through the ordinances, get through the charter changes tonight. But we're going to be recommending, I think, in the near future, a bunch of items go into rules, so just trying to keep the vice president busy. So we're gonna move to question 5 for now. We're gonna, Denise, we could just make a note, question 4 we're coming back to. Question 5 is discussion about addition of a recall language. The Winthrop Town Charter provides no provision for a recall of an elected official through a citizen's initiative. Recall is the power of the voters to remove elected officials before their term expires. The history of recall elections date back to 1631. Inclusion of the language being pros and cons. Just trying to get the more defined version of this. Does it talk about it? That's what I have, but it doesn't really say. I mean, the recommendation is, should the charter be amended to add a provision that will allow for a recall of an elected official through a citizen's initiative? Now, there is language as what is required for that recall, which I do not have in front of me. Vice President, do you have that language?
Yeah, it's, full page of.
Yeah, I know. Maybe that's why I don't have it. I mean, I guess we'll just read it. So, a recall, so they're suggesting that we have language, recall language included in the charter. So a recall petition would be able to be initiated by the filing of an affidavit containing the name of the officer sought to be recalled and a statement for the grounds of recall, providing that the affidavit is signed by at least 4% of the registered voters for any townwide or at-large position, and at least 4% voters of an elected office, provided, however, that the signatures for recall provision for the office of precinct councilor shall be from certified voters in that precinct. So just to give people an indication, I think we have roughly 11,500, 12,000 registered voters. So let's say 12,000 registered voters, so 4% of 12,000 would be 480. So this is saying, in simple terms, that they're looking for 480 signatures, provided the affidavit is signed by 480. However, the signatures for the recall provision, now, the town clerk shall thereupon deliver to those voters, making the affidavit copies of the blank shall be, oh, this is crazy.
I can summarize.
Yeah, but, you know, the question here, and then it says, said recall position shall be returned and filed with the town clerk within 28 days after filing the affidavit.
The petition and affidavit are two distinct differences.
Yes, so the petition is just to get, basically, it's like pulling papers.
Right.
But they're requiring roughly 500 signatures to ask for the paper that is to be pulled. So you need 500, basically, certified signatures to request to pull a paper or a petition for a recall.
That's only for townwide offices.
Yes. It's just easier to explain to townwide.
Right.
And then you need 20%.
No, you need
Yeah.
another 4% of a precinct. So if it's a precinct
Right,
person.
no, I'm just going on the at-large first, so it's 20, after you get the affidavit,
Right, then you go to 20%.
then you need 20% of the voters, so then you need, so if you think somebody's doing something egregious and you think that they should be removed, you need to go out and get 500 signatures from people. those signatures have to be certified by the town clerk's office. Once they're certified, then they will get a petition. Now they have to have 20% of roughly 12,000. So now you're talking 2,400 signatures certified.
Which the clerk's office has to certify.
No, that's,
Yes.
the 20%, I think, is in reference to the actual vote.
No, it's
No,
not.
that's just petition.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The petition.
Okay.
So now you have to get 2,400 signatures. Now, a caveat with this is you cannot recall someone 6 months after an election or 6 months prior to an election. So if it's for a 2-year term office, it's very hard to even do this recall as written. If it's for a 4-year term, it's plausible. It would, just to give people an idea, when we did the charter and had to have a charter committee formed, it required, I think it was pretty close to 2,400 or more signatures. And it required months and months of work and multiple dozens of people at different places getting signatures, and the certification process was arduous at best. So this is I think it's a high standard. If you're looking for a recall provision, it's a pretty high standard. Vice President or Council Flockhart, do you care to clarify this a little differently or make it easier to understand?
I think that clarifies that. How many voters are there in a precinct?
Roughly,
Roughly like maybe 2,500 to 3,000.
yeah, if there's 12,000 and there's 6 precincts, there's roughly say 2,400, if it's close to 13.
Okay, so 4% of 2,400.
4% of 2,400 would be 96.
96, so you'd get almost 100 signatures.
That's just for the first part.
That's just to
Different
get the paper.
affidavit.
Yes.
That's to get the paper.
Yes, initiate,
And then you need roughly 500 signatures from a precinct.
yes.
Wait, I don't-
400.
Then we need to run an
No, if
election.
it's
And then you run
20%
an
of
election.
2,500.
Well,
Then
wait a
if
minute.
you get those signatures, they
I mean,
get
give or
certified,
take.
then
it was
you run the
2,000.
election.
Wait a minute, can't just one, as written right now, can't just one person pull a paper to do a recall?
No,
No, that's been changed.
no, it hasn't been changed, that's what, there
It's
is
always
no
been written.
recall provision in the charter
Right.
right now. So.
You mean it's been changed
this
from what they
amendment-
originally, this is from them.
I was
And it
confused at
states.
first too, but
Yeah.
It's not
these are
one
pretty
person.
high.
We will read it again. A
4%.
recall petition
Yeah.
Or 100.
may be initiated just to start the process by filing an affidavit containing the name of the officer sought to be recalled
Right,
and the reason why.
So one
The
person can do
affidavit
that.
has to be signed.
yeah.
Yes, that affidavit, so I have to say, I want to recall Counselor DeMarco because
Yeah.
he's wearing a hat during the meeting.
Okay.
So.
You got a signature.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks a lot, Bill.
So I need to write that down, write why I want, and then I have to go and get 4%, I have to get 500 signatures. Then I have to bring those 500 signatures to our illustrious town clerk. She then has to certify all those signatures. Then she will give you back a petition. Now I have to go out and get 2,400 signatures. Now I have the ability to get it on the ballot. Now I need 2,400 certified signatures to get it on the ballot. That's the way that's the way I read this. If somebody else reads it differently.
No, I think that's correct, and do you think that, they
That's
can
not a-
get 480 signatures against your house?
They could get.
We got one?
Yeah, we got one right here. Come
Maybe
on.
2.
Hey, don't.
Do you really think 500 people would take the time to sign it? You know?
Honestly, if you think about how hard it would be to get those signatures, it would be a grassroots campaign of lots and lots of
But
people.
think how
Plus,
hard
it's
it was to
28
get the
days.
50.
Councilor Aiello.
Sorry.
Is there a performance standard? In other words, from the moment you file the first set, do you
Oh.
have 30 days or 60 days?
I think there is
28
something
days.
in here about it.
28 days for the first?
Yep.
And then,
Yeah.
No,
And then nothing.
between affidavit and
No,
petition.
between affidavit and petition. So once you get the 500 signatures, they're certified, and then they give you, basically, they give you your papers. You have 28 days to
28
get
days to
returned.
get a second, but the first one has no time
No.
limit, right?
That's, incredibly hard to do.
Oh, no, no, I understand.
Incredibly.
What
I mean, the standard is there. If anyone chose to have a recall, this is a pretty high standard.
Yeah. No, what I'm wondering is whether we should have not a tight standard, but some standard, because someone circulating a petition to recall someone, if they just never get their act together and they go for months and months to get this first level, it's the specter of that there's a group trying to recall Hannah, which I would not sign because I'm not in your precinct,
That's the only
even
reason.
if I were.
She wants your cup back.
Good comeback.
My grandson stole your cup, I
Yeah.
need a second one, but I still love you. But, there ought to be some kind of a timed performance, and it could be 90 days or something. I'm not saying it has to be short, but you don't want this thing to sort of drag out over the long term. That would be something to think about.
Sure.
Raise your hand up.
Yes.
Council Belcher.
I think that this is, when I first read it, I didn't think it was strict enough, and then when I looked at the numbers closely, I think that this is a good, it's difficult enough, it's harder to do a recall than run a campaign, right? Like, you need more signatures. But I think that's a really good point Councilor Aiello made, because in theory, then, after someone's first 6 months, someone can start the process and it can linger for.
Well, the process hasn't started, because technically, you're not going to the town clerk saying, I'm gonna have a petition. You're writing the petition, and then you're going out and getting signatures. The first time the town clerk sees you is when you're going in with your 500 signatures
500,
asking for a
okay.
recall.
All right.
And then the clock starts running at 28 days,
Oh,
which
okay.
is,
So it's the
again,
other way.
a high standard.
Yeah, that seems, I mean, nobody wants to
So
think
this is,
something really
basically what this is doing is, it's giving the citizens, I mean, to me, it's giving the citizens the right to recall someone who has done something terrible,
Right, yeah.
instead of waiting until the next election. That's
But
basically.
I think it precludes harassment recalls.
Well, it doesn't technically, but
Well-
yes, I mean, that standard is to a point where it should. Councilor DeMarco?
I would like to make an amendment to this recall language.
You can leave your-
First off, under section A, application, I would change, may be recalled therefrom by 25 voters of the town. In other words, you need 25 voters just to get the recall signatures. And then.
Get to the first step.
Correct. The recall petition under section B would be signed by at least 1,500 registered voters for any town-wide or at-large position, and at least 250 voters for any other elected officials.
So you're making it easier.
No, I'm not making it easier at all. I'm making it, first off, you need 25 signatures just to even put this in play.
Well,
right
the
now
way
you
it
need
is right now, you need
480.
500.
But you still need the 25 people to go.
True.
No, there's no official papers that are being drawn for the 500. In other words, you make up your own thing. Now, you
Right.
could say, we want to have a formal pulling of papers, and then.
Right now, the way it is, one person can go to town hall and say, I want this person recalled.
No, they can't.
Yes, they can go to town hall with a paper signed by 500 people
500 people.
and saying,
But they have to have
I want
500 people sign.
you to give me papers to recall Counselor X.
And then they gotta go out and get.
And then they have to
a
go out and
higher
get
number.
2,400 roughly signatures for a town-wide office.
Whereas if they just do 25 signatures, we're gonna have a ton of harassment
Right,
suits.
25.
And your hat is in danger.
Yeah, I think your thought is to make it tougher, and I think you're making it easier because it's.
All right.
It's
Inadvertently, yeah.
it's, I've read it 4 different ways myself, so it's, but this is the way I'm reading it now.
Yeah. So the first
Do you
step
wanna
is.
withdraw your motion?
I'll withdraw my
Motion is. So the first step would be to write a petition to have Counselor X sign an or to write an affidavit to have Counselor X recalled. You would have to go out and get roughly 500 signatures. You would then bring that affidavit to the town clerk. The town clerk would then verify the 500 signatures. If there are 500 signatures verified, so you'd probably have to get 800,
Right.
honestly, to have 500 verified. Once you get 500 verified signatures, the town clerk would issue you a petition to begin the recall procedure. You would then have to go out, and if it's a townwide office, get roughly 2,400 signatures. So again, you're probably looking at 3,000 signatures to get 2,400 verified. And you have to do that in a 28-day period. If you are able to do that, and if the town clerk hasn't quit by then, you will have it on a ballot. That would be, on a subsequent ballot. Counselor Munson?
Just out of curiosity, can the town clerk tell us what the process is to actually review a signature? Is it a time-consuming process? Do you have to find other documents with their signature to actually confirm it?
We have to confirm that they're a registered voter.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once we confirm they're a registered voter, then we have to be able to read their signature. If we can't read their signature, then it's a blank.
Isn't it usually a sign, like a handprint, and then a signature, which is usually like, if it's a doctor, it's like,
Right, a lot of people don't do the printing, they just write their name.
and if it's not legible, the signature's not legible, and the print is not there, then it's no longer valid.
Right, the blank.
Wow. So, okay, so there is a lot of time spent per signature, or not a lot, but at least a few
Right, it's
minutes.
time-consuming.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So this is an arduous process. You know, when we first read this, it looked like all they needed was 4% to get this this chart recall started. And we were all like, there's no way, we don't want this to be a frivolous thing. When you look at it now with the full detail, the ORC made it very challenging. This would be a huge undertaking. And I do think that there is, even though it's crazy hard to do, I think there's a cause to have it. And the reason why is because I can think of an example right off the top of my head why this situation, what would warrant something like this, where there may be someone, and no one in this current this board is of this type of person, but this would be a person that has no shame, that could do something that's not quite a criminal act, but is completely devious and self-serving or what have you, and there is no recourse currently in the charter for it. This adds accountability. I think the ORC made it very tough to get implemented. I think this should be voted for in favor of.
Any further discussion? Council Vice President Ruggiero.
I'll just say it's taken us, 25 minutes about to just figure out the details of this. But I think the principle of a recall is something that we all need to consider here as well. To me, this diminishes the value of our election process. Ultimately, our interview for another 2 or 4 years is election day. I don't want to do anything to kind of diminish the value of that. I will say too, well, no, I'll leave it at that for now. But I voted against this twice. I'm going to vote against it for a third time, just based on that alone. That this is the United States of America. We have elections, and I think they're important. And by doing this, kind of takes away from that.
One thing. Sorry.
Town manager.
And Denise just pointed out, one thing that, we talked about expenses and the time that it takes in the offices. If this person, the recall provision goes through, they don't resign, there's also the cost of a special election that has to happen after that, which could be upwards of $25,000. So, just want to make sure that's
But
pointed
I
out.
think what their thought is this is not gonna happen every day. It's just like.
I get it.
But we'll go to, you're not
Sorry,
finished?
and I think I've seen in other, cities and towns that do have this, sometimes the cost of the election is fronted by the petitioner. That's something that maybe some of my colleagues would like to include as an amendment. Again, I'm not voting for this either way, but just throwing that out there.
Council Flockhart?
I think that there is the opportunity for somebody to have done something egregious and still have 2 years to serve on their 4-year term. So I think having a recall petition is needed. And
Counsel-
And I assure you that there are people that go to jail and get reelected.
There are.
I hope none of us plan on doing that.
Very
Getting reelected or going to
but-
jail? Counselor DeMarco, then Counselor Aiello.
Denise, going back to the vote on the 2 years versus 4 years, how,
Yes, I was gonna talk about
Yeah.
that. We voted against that, so it will maintain 4 years.
So that, I want just everybody to keep in mind that, because you can't get recalled in the first 6 months, you can't get recalled in the last 6 months. If we went to 2-year terms, that would give you a 1-year window to get recalled. Now it's 3, so you need to keep that in mind.
I think, Counselor Aiello.
I'll address this to the Vice President. I was in the same place as you until the events of the last 6 months with the newly elected congressman from New York, where it's godly unbelievable. And, you know, if in fact the citizens find out that somebody had completely misrepresented them or taken loads of cash, there ought to be, you know, I never thought that extreme would exist. Guess what? It now exists.
What can you possibly be talking about?
I'm not naming names, but jeepers.
Counselor Belcher.
I think that this is something nobody ever wants to use, but it's kind of like an insurance policy, right? There's, especially looking at 4-year terms, I think, I don't think we'll ever have to use it, really. I hope we never have to use it, but I think it's a valid thing to have in place just in case.
It's a tool that you hope that you don't use, but it's there if you need it. I think, again, as Counselor DeMarco brought up, the fact that we're gonna maintain 4-year terms for counselors, I think that is something that it should be there. I think we addressed some of it with the abandonment clause. I think that addresses some of it, that somebody might just not show up at meetings, and that kinda, you know, maybe the thought of going through it would just put on the abandonment clause after a couple of months, so. But I do think it was worthwhile event for the ORC to do. I'm glad they did it, and I would be supporting it, at least going to the, Counselor Munson?
The only thing that I wanted to just add to it is, we didn't actually do the numbers for the precinct. It would be around 80 to 90 to get the affidavit.
It'd be about 90 to get the affidavit, and
And around-
20% of, it would be about 500. And again, 500 certified means you're getting about 700 or 800 signatures to
Yeah.
get 500 certified.
Over 28 days, so it's.
Over 28 days.
That's tough, yeah.
Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote to initiate a recall provision in the charter with the languages we
Does
described.
it need a second?
Second,
Because it didn't come out of committee with a positive recommendation.
it's not coming out of this committee, it's just a recommendation from the ORC.
Okay.
Counsel Honan,
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo. Counsel Munson,
Yes?
Counsel Belcher,
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco,
Yes,
Counsel Flockhart,
Yes,
Counsel Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
No.
President Lettieri.
Yes. So that did pass.
That passed.
Well, now we're gonna be flying, right?
we should be.
Should the charter be amended to include that if there is a dispute between the charter and the council rules, the charter is binding? This was just, you know, something that was probably missed. I think this is relatively simple. Any discussion or questions on this? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. Again, we need 6 votes for it to go forward. And this is just saying that if there's a debate between the charter and the council rules, the charter takes precedent.
Counsel Honan,
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo,
Yes.
Counsel Munson,
Yes?
Counsel Belcher,
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco,
Yes,
Counsel Flockhart,
yes,
Counsel Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. Recommendation number 7, should the filling of vacancies language on the school committee, housing authority, and board of library trustees as set forth in the charter be amended to mirror the vacancy process for the town council. So, I think this was another worthwhile endeavor. I think the thought was, the council has a member that's left. the council picks their replacement until the next election. School committee, or board of library trustees, or the housing authority has a vacancy, that board along with the council. And the council has more members than any other board, so therefore the council has more leverage in picking, you know, as earlier we discussed about boards and committees being able to pick their own chairs. This is, you know, saying that the boards and committees should be able to replace their own members. And at first, I thought this was pretty simple, and I was very much in favor of it. I had talked to a former council president, our first council president, who, and I've said it before, who I respect immensely, and he thought there might be language in the state that prevented this because we are the highest ranked officials in town. We are the people's voice. We should have the opportunity to weigh in on any of these on any of these filling of positions. We did ask, and I'm trying to filibuster like our vice president did. I'm filibustering until the town manager gets back, because he did tell me that he did speak to someone who told him that we were on the right path, that we probably should not do this. It could go to the state, but it might come back. So I'm gonna ask the town manager to weigh in on the filling of positions. And I had said how you had spoken to somebody that said it might, you know, the fact that we are the highest ranked officials and we are the people's voice, we should be weighing in.
Yeah, and there's a state law that mandates that, like
Yeah.
two elected boards have to get together when there's a vacancy and fill that. So when you push this up to the state level, they'll say, well, what's broken and why are you trying to fix it? So there's a chance that it could get kicked back at that level. So I just wanna be honest about that, and they felt
So
it
it
could
could
be a
go
good
forward,
chance.
but it might get
Yeah.
kicked back.
They're asking you what problem you're trying to solve and what's the issue, so, yeah.
Council Vice President.
Yeah, I was in favor for this, but with that information, I mean, it's hard for me, you know, I don't want this body to get into the habit of voting on things that we shouldn't be voting on until we have full information. I've been doing this for a few years now, and that's happened a couple times, I think, already. You know, I mean, is it appropriate to even vote on this with that information? I guess I'll direct that to the town manager, or what, you know, what's the recourse here if we find out that we've done something?
Well, I think the recourse is the state will come back and say no.
I wonder, it's not illegal, like, you can
Okay.
ask for anything, there's nothing illegal about it, but just so you know, when the state looks at it, they might tell you, you know, what are you trying to fix, and they may kick it back, it's because they still have that right to do that. What you're asking for is completely legal and allowed, it's just, you know, where it's a state law, you might get some pushback asking, what, you know, what problem are you trying to solve and what's the issue, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure you're saying
Yeah.
it's the state law, but nevertheless, they might allow us to do it.
Because you're allowed to do, there's a lot of state laws that home rule petitions can, you know, overturn, but the state legislature has to give you permission to do it.
To overturn a state law.
Correct, yeah.
Right, to say like, we're unique in a way that we need this.
Yeah, right, you're
because
unique, yeah.
They're gonna.
What's the unique, you know, the uniqueness of Winthrop to overrule this? It's not illegal to ask for it, yeah, so.
And I have a lot of faith in former President Riley, and when he said something to me,
Yeah.
I figured he had a pretty good reason for it. And I think he's proven out to be right. I think the thought of the ORC and the thought of many people on this committee was, you know, we should be given the right of the school committee and the library directors and the board and the housing authority to pick their own replacement. I think we were admirable in our thought, but I think there's a reason, because we are the people's voice and they want us to weigh in, is the thought. Any-
But those other boards are elected townwide.
They are.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we'd answer that uniqueness question, I think we'd have to kind of discuss
Yeah,
that.
I think we'd have
You
to
know.
be, I think if we're going to move this, we have to be pretty well prepared to say, we're gonna have to come up with a good reason as to why we wanna do this, because there's a need for this, because this.
So our reason would be that there's more of us than there are of them.
Right, it has come up
Therefore,
on,
We always
I
win.
mean, probably 5 or 6 occasions in the last 10 years, so it's not that it never happens, it happens. And again, it's only until the next election, so it's a, you know, at most, it's a, you know, 2-year thing, I guess, at the very most.
And just a clarification, we'd have to, the uniqueness issue is not the size of the bodies, it's we'd have to convince the state that
Sure.
there's something different about Winthrop from
Than
all
every
the other
other.
cities and towns that this state law should not apply to us, right? That's a very high bar to pass.
Although, if I may.
Council Munson.
Thank you, President Lettieri. I was just gonna say that there is a situation where if there are enough towns are actually finding that this rule doesn't make a lot of sense for them, that it's not like we're gonna have to prove that we're unique. It's like proving that we are just like everyone else and find this rule stupid. You know, so I think that there may be a situation where instead of punting because the state says don't do it this way, we could actually just go ahead and do the proposed change. And if we get into trouble, we ask for forgiveness on.
Oh, and you won't even get in trouble, they'll just say no, right? So it's not, you're not gonna get
They're
in
not gonna
trouble or
slap us.
anything. They'll just say no to that piece of it, so that's all, so, you know.
What's going on in Winthrop over there, you guys haven't read this?
Right.
It's that new town manager
Yeah.
trying to.
Tony said we could do it.
I've worked in a bunch of towns, it's not an issue, but again, it's the size of the board, right? It's usually a select board that's 5 members and a school committee that's 7, and
Right.
they get together and it's not a huge issue, but here where it's 9 and, I think what school committee, 7 or 5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 6 really, because one of them is a
Council
member of the
president,
council,
Yeah, so, yeah.
who votes as a council member.
Right, and there was one missing,
Yeah.
so therefore.
Right, so there would be 5 at the
And
most.
the only risk is they'll say no, right? So it's just, that's, yeah.
Councilor Aiello?
I was gonna move the question, but.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's worth putting forward if the worst case scenario is they tell us no. I don't
Well,
know, that might be a little
I
complicated.
don't think that's a bad attitude, but the situation is not that they might push it back. The situation is we need to have an answer for them when they push it back. We can't just say,
Never
okay, thank
mind.
you. I mean, we can, I guess, but
Yeah.
we'll look like fools. We have to say, this is why we did
We'll
this.
have
This
some
is
time.
why.
It'll take them a little while to get to know, yeah.
So there was a motion to move the question. Second by Vice President Ruggiero. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed no. The ayes have it. So we will ask for a vote to, so a 6-yes vote would potentially put on a ballot to change the way multiple member, elected bodies such as the library trustees, the housing authority, and the school committee, replacements are chosen. So a yes vote would change the process, a no vote would leave it the same.
Council Honan,
No.
Council Picello,
Yes.
Council Munson,
Yes.
Council Belcher,
No.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
No.
Council Aiello,
No.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri,
No. All right, that did not pass.
You need 6, you only have 4.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that didn't.
All right, question number 8, we are going to return to. It's a, I think it's a no-brainer, but it's something, it's not a charter change. Question number 9, should Charter Section 7.8 be amended, changing the time for which the town council may adopt the budget from 45 days following the date of the proposed budget was received to not less than 15 days prior to the start of the fiscal year. And this all comes from, this is just a procedural item that we've had issues with in the past. We want to get the budget as a council as fast as possible. But by the charter, once we get it, we have 45 days to act on it. So if we were fortunate enough to get a budget on March 1st, by roughly May 15th, we'd have to vote on it. And we technically have a whole nother month that items might come up, we might get more information, we might want to change our mind. So we've always kind of got a working budget and haven't had an official presentation until April 1st. So this gives us, instead of changing it to 45 days from when we get the budget, we'll change it to 15 days from the fiscal year, the new fiscal year ending. So this way we would have until the second meeting in June, usually the 15th of June, to vote on a budget. So it's just a language change. I think it gives us the opportunity to get a formal presentation of the budget, gives the town the opportunity to have more transparency in looking at the budget, gives us all more opportunity for transparency and clarity in getting a budget in a sooner period of time. So now if the budget's ready February 1st, we could have it. We could work on it for 4 months. Any questions on this? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote. We would need 6 yes votes to make this change.
Council Honan,
No.
Council Fusillo,
Yes.
Council Munson,
Yes.
Council Belcher,
Yes.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
Yes.
Council Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes, that has passed. Question number 10, should the Charter Section 7-11 be amended, changing the time from which the town manager must submit a capital improvement program to the town council from 120 days before the start of each fiscal year to with the budget for the upcoming year? So now there's not a specific date set for when the budget must be submitted. Correct?
No, there is.
Oh, there is.
Currently?
Yeah.
Currently, it's the March, right?
It's the what?
I think it's
Last day of
120
March.
days.
The
from
last day,
March.
right.
Yeah.
What, it's the last day in March because of that 45
Right.
days to get it to, right,
Oh, we just
But it-
passed that.
right. So this is saying that instead of February 1st, basically, is when the capital improvement plan should be done, right? 120 days? Is that
No,
right?
no, I
Before
think
June?
Before June.
Before July, nah, March 1st.
March 1st.
March 1st.
March
I thought we had
1st.
March 1st, yeah.
is right.
Beginning of June 1st, so,
Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
right.
Full-
So this
full
would
months,
change
yeah.
it.
This would or would not change it?
Well, this would change the language, so the capital improvement plan would come with the budget potentially. Doesn't have to come, it could still come before, but it could come, it doesn't have to come 120 days, it has to come basically by March 30th. But the whole plan of going to the 15 days is hoping that we're gonna get budgets earlier. So if the budget was submitted earlier, it would have to be submitted along with the budget.
So it can't be submitted later than the budget.
No. No. So this is changing potentially from March 1st is when it would have to be submitted, or before, to potentially submitted as late as March 30th. And it would come along with the budget.
It's, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, Council.
It just seems like it's contrary to common sense for me. Like, part of you're using the capital improvement plan to make decisions for the budget. Granted, it's a bigger picture, longer-term vision. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me that you would do it in tandem, as opposed to one before the other. It just seems like the capital improvement plan should be a major, big vision priority prior to putting it together of annual budget. So it doesn't make sense to me. I would be opposed without further knowledge.
Councilor Aiello.
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Munson. I think that the way that the charter currently envisions everything, both in terms of the substance of the plan as well as the separate track for the capital plan, is, in my experience, the best way to move this stuff forward. It's never been done before, and thanks to the new town manager, we're gonna finally be on that track to do that. I think the public has never been able, because everything sort of all came at once, operating budget, capital budget, to sort of be able to dive into the capital budget to understand priorities, itemization, clarity, sequencing, studies, special studies that are being done, et cetera. Those are all the relevant items. Understanding what our capital liabilities are and what our priorities are over time, et cetera. It's a completely different set of it requires a different set of thinking than an operating budget. Cramming them all together, moving them along together, I think is too much for the citizens. I think it's too much for the council. So I really think we should just keep as is and follow the way the charter has described it.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Yeah, so the original thought out of well, I won't speak for the whole committee, I'll speak for myself. My original thought with this is that we hadn't really gone through a capital improvement program, at least in my tenure on the council. We haven't really received something, official that we could all read. So, we've really never seen this work the way it should. That kind of sparked the idea of a change to the process process where it would make it easier on the administration to kind of prepare both documents at once and present it to us. Now, this document that we have was dated August 2nd, 2022. Tony started when? Just
May.
May.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really before Tony was up and running and, you know, set to go. And I think now that we have a commitment that things are gonna work the way that the charter currently says it works, you know, I think we give that a try, and in the next ORC in 2 years, we can review it again. So,
Good to keep that.
I'm sure you'll be on
So-
that committee.
So this was passed 9-0 by the ORC, but I will, and I guess I will say on this is, you know, if, a lot of times when thinking of a capital plan, you're thinking of like a 5-year capital plan, right? And that's one thing, and that's something that can be worked on, a more detailed document, and you don't need as much input from the upcoming fiscal year budget. When you're doing a capital improvement plan for fiscal '24, you need that budget. Unless you're only using money, if you're only planning on saying, okay, I'm gonna use 10% of the capital reserve for capital projects or whatever, then you don't need the budget. But if you do, and if you're looking at other ways, if it's buying police vehicles, which was on a capital plan, if it's doing, you need to have that working budget to be able to see what you have available. I think what this does is gives the town manager a month longer potentially a month longer if they choose to get a detailed plan and an accurate plan. To throw out a capital budget in February and then come March and say, you know what, I need more money for this or for that, or we just settled a contract and we're not gonna be able to do that because we need to move capital here, or we need to increase the contingency line item because we have contracts coming up. I think it's very hard to do, you know, when you're talking, again, like a 5-year plan, then you have a vision. And again, if you're doing a 5-year plan, what do you need it every year? I never understood the 5-year plan because we never got to year 2 of anything. But if you're doing a capital improvement plan for fiscal '24 now, you need to know what funds you have available and how you choose to, you know, and if we have projects coming up, and do you want to, is it worth it to say, you know what, we're gonna look at trying to increase reserves because we're gonna be potentially going out for a bond, we wanna be able to get a better rating. So I think this basically, what this does is it gives the town manager an extra little time to make sure that they have it right. So I would be in favor of this along with the OSC, but I'd be in favor of it going forward.
Can we,
Councilor Munson?
can we ask Tony what his thoughts on this?
Absolutely.
Tony, would it make it more flexible for you to be able to pull together both at the same time? To have less rules, essentially?
I'm working on both of them right now. I mean, I've never not done them both at the same time. But I've always had a solid 5-year capital plan too. So we gotta build one here, and this year will be pretty good, and then next year will be even better after we get the facilities needs assessment done, you know, and then you can work it. But I mean, you should, you know, if all goes well, and next year we can have the budget done, and this passes, or we can have the budget done earlier. I mean, I've always had the budget done by end of January, early February. That's always been the time frame. And capital plan usually went right along with that, because you start those requests. If this request goes through, we'll start, rather than asking for it a little later, we'll start back in October, November timeframe to the department heads to give the budgets, and everything's ready and, you know, ticking and talking, and then we're really all waiting on free cash at that point, which we usually have certified by then, so.
So the short answer is you would be okay with this passing?
Oh, yeah, I'd be fine with it, yeah.
And okay.
It'll take some time, a few years to get up and running, get the capital plan the way we want it, but yeah, once we're there, and then there's that level, and then there's what Joe spoke about earlier, you know, the strategic plan, like as we're asking for votes on the large projects, what's the big ticket number? We got, you know, 40 miles of road, we've gotta, you know, do this large project, so there's 2 different levels, like Jim talks about the fine-tuned capital plan is like ongoing maintenance and projects, things like that, and the facilities needs assessment. Then there's the big global one is where we're asking for debt exclusions and larger ticket items that come down the pike, so I mean, there's 2 different levels there.
Councilor Aiello.
Yeah, just to clarify, yes, I was talking about big global plans, but I'm also talking about the inadequacy of the capital plans that we have been
Correct,
receiving, right?
and that's the plan to fix that, yeah.
And we can have an early allocation coming out of you and finance about fungible dollars and how much should be recommended to go to capital and how much should be operating. That's a traditional the way it's done, but I think the time to get into the details, just as an example, this past summer, we saw a lot of pavement and sidewalks being done on Pleasant Street. You can't find that in the capital plan, right? Ridiculous. I can name 5 or 6 other things you can't find in the capital plan. It would be crucial, that's taxpayer dollars, for taxpayer dollars to understand that there is a plan with this money to do X and allow people to say, why aren't we doing Y? The way that the process is currently designed in the charter today would allow for that conversation to happen in detail. So this is not just pie in the sky 5-year. This is sort of what are we doing with the taxpayers' money starting in July 1st of next year on the capital side. So I just want to be clear that this covers what I think is in the what I know is in the charter today, not I think, would cover our ability to ask questions and to invite the public in to get their view on how capital dollars should be spent, their views, not their direction. And that could be laid up against the capital needs that Tony has laid out for everybody and then allow a prioritization process to happen. So,
To be clear, that was, the question I was asked, it would be a burden. I mean, we could have that conversation, instead we have it in January instead of February, you know.
You can have
Yeah,
it,
yeah, we have it, I'm not saying don't have the
but
conversation.
I'd like it early.
I'm asking
I'd
if it was
like
a
it on
burden,
some
and the
track.
answer was
Yeah.
no, I mean, we can make that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
If this were to pass, it would still be an open and transparent process, it might just happen a little earlier, that's all.
And a lot of the situations that we've had, especially in terms of paving, have come from, and nobody 20 years ago, or 18 years ago with the charter would have predicted a pandemic where, you know, there were ESSA funds available and the funds have to be used for certain items, including infrastructure, and there's a timeliness of using that. So, which, you know, wasn't part of the original capital plan, wasn't to do every one of those streets, but funds became available for certain
Again,
items.
funds became available, we knew that well before the capital plan was fixed. There was vagueness in the capital plan, there was never a discussion, are we gonna use it for trees, are we gonna use it for crosswalks, are we gonna use it for other kinds of,
Well, some of the money was earmarked for certain items, couldn't be used for anything other than water and sewer
never had a
projects.
discussion about that.
Well,
right?
that wasn't our discussion to have, that was the direction from the federal government.
We never had a discussion of what the federal government's rules were. In fact, the federal government's rules, depending upon the pot of money,
Right,
would allow you
depending
to do
upon
a
the money.
wide variety of
Right.
things.
But the money
We
that
never
we
had that
used was
discussion,
used for
did not have to
infrastructure.
be used for pavement and sidewalks. Okay? So I know the rules as well as anybody else on that money, so let me just be very clear. That's a discussion that needs to happen, no matter what the source is, and the public needs to be aware of it, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to discuss it. The way it's in the charter today, if we're to follow the charter, and it hasn't been followed for 16 years, I don't know why, it would enable that discussion and that clarification for everybody.
Okay, we're gonna move this question, so a yes vote would, I don't even know what we're doing. A yes vote would change the time from which the town manager submits a capital program to the town council from 120 days to with the budget for the upcoming year. So a no vote would basically keep things the way it is. A yes vote would change it, enabling the town manager to submit a capital plan along with the budget. Needs 6 yes votes to go to the ballot and go to the citizens. Roll call, please.
Council Honan,
No.
Council Fusillo,
Yes.
Council Munson,
No.
Council Belcher,
No.
Council DeMarco,
Yes.
Council Flockhart,
No.
Council Aiello,
Nope.
Vice President Ruggiero,
No.
President Lettieri.
Yes. So that does not pass. Number 11. Transient lodging. That is another one that we're gonna come back to.
Number 11?
Yep.
Okay.
Or not a charter change. Number 12. Another charter, ordinance. Number 13. Another ordinance.
These are all ordinances.
13, I think, is charter.
13, should the ORC, adopt the changes proposed by the Collins Center?
So
Which
these
is
are the
Turco.
carryover recommendations from
Right.
the Turco.
Right, from the previous
Yeah,
committee.
and there are a lot of technical, non-substantive changes that do affect the charter. These were recommended by the Collins Center. We had a grant with them 2 years
Right, this was the ORC going along with, I mean, the previous review committee didn't have the opportunity to come to finality, but they took what they had done, all the work that they had done, and they're basically bringing it forward. And it has, you know, many small nuances. And this, I believe, was unanimously passed.
It's a lot of like removing whole numbers, right? So like the first one is a good example, like remove 2005. Like there's like dates in the current charter, so it's things like that.
I don't think any of them really change the.
Doesn't change the composition of the charter, it's just, you know, grammatical,
Grammatical,
yeah,
right.
clarity and
An
grammatical.
apostrophe should be added here, so that the, you know, things like that.
It's copy edited and changed.
So this would require a 6 votes to go forward. Not sure if it needs to go to the electorate or not, but we will make that, we will get advice from the state on that. So this is pretty clear cut. Any discussion?
Yeah, so there's one section in here that amends the abandonment clause, however, we just
Did
changed the
that.
abandonment clause. So, hang on, I'm sorry.
So with a motion to delete the abandonment
Yeah.
clause
I mean, I don't
are we gonna go 13 as totality and then therefore be able to accept amendments
It
to
sounds like it
delete
fits right in.
one section if needed?
I think it fits in with the revised.
Which section are you trying to
What
remove,
page are
Steve?
you on, Steve?
It's Article
28.
2,
Which section?
recommendation number 13, the Collins Center.
Right.
Article 2 is what we're talking about.
Well, Article 2 covers like,
The council shall be the sole judge of determining abandonment by 2/3 votes, and such abandonment council
Oh, I
seat shall be
see.
filled.
So it's on page 28 of the.
So that's inconsistent, isn't it, with what we?
The council
No,
shall
I
be the
think
sole
this
judge of
fits right
determining
into what
abandonment
we
by a
changed
2/3
it.
vote. Yeah, so I think you'd have to make an amendment to eliminate Article 2, legislative branch.
Oh, no, I'm
I
sorry,
don't-
I'm reading, so this is,
I think it's still,
no,
I
I think,
think
yeah,
it
because this is
fits
other
in.
than the town council, okay,
Yeah.
never mind. Sorry, I just, again, wanted to make sure we're. Other than the town. Right, we just, no, I just wanted to make,
Right,
that's,
yeah.
yeah.
oh, the whole legislative branch section?
They
Oh,
put
it's
it
fine,
in.
sorry,
I think they're all.
So it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's fine, because it's other than the town
Yeah,
council.
but what's this say here?
Oh, it's right here.
Is that just?
It's just a definition of
correct
term.
summary?
Shall be filled.
Are you looking on 24?
Yeah,
And the change that they made isn't,
On 24?
yeah.
So here's the new abandonment clause.
That's a new one,
Yeah.
yeah, that we just
This is-
passed.
This applies to the charter as it existed.
That's right, so I think that has to come out.
Yeah, it has.
Being debated, and it's because we just voted on the abandonment section? that
So,
there's- wondering
okay.
if there's any redundancy, there's not.
Page 28 was wrong, I think it's page 24 that.
Right.
Or,
I think we just adopt the whole thing.
So this is kind of making, this would contradict.
Yes.
This is saying basically there's no change, a 2/3 vote can consider it abandonment if they, you know, fell asleep at a meeting.
And
So
we just changed the whole thing,
Right.
anyway. So I think we
should strike
strike
that.
this section and then
language
approve.
Article
page
2,
24.
section 2-1D.
Yeah, that abandonment clause in there.
So do you need a motion?
Yeah, you need a motion, an amendment.
I'll make a motion to amend recommendation 13 to remove the abandonment clause section because we just updated the abandonment.
So that would be Article 2, Section
I'll second that.
2(1)D.
Right.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. To amend motion number recommendation 13 to not include
Article 2, section 2, 1.
Article 2, Section 2(1)D on page 24. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote of the amendment.
Council Honan,
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo,
Yes.
Counsel Munson,
Yes.
Counsel Belcher,
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco,
Yes.
Counsel Flockhart,
Yes.
Counsel Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes. Let's move the question of recommendation number 13 as amended. Roll call vote, please. Need 6 yes votes to pass.
Counsel Honan,
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo,
Yes.
Counsel Munson,
Yes.
Counsel Belcher,
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco,
Yes.
Counsel Flockhart,
Yes.
Counsel Aiello,
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero,
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes.
So we still have 4, 11, and 12, or?
We have 4, 8, 11, and 12, which we are not going to go over tonight. We are going, I hear a lot of parched and dry voices all of a sudden. I don't know if it's the air in the room. We need a dehumidifier. Or humidifier. We are going to, some of these, I'm just going to make motions to, on the next council meeting, to forward to ordinance review, because I think they're pretty much no-brainers. But we obviously have discussion on them, so,
And a vote of confidence would be, in next meeting.
so recommendation 4, 8, 11, and 12 will be on the agenda at the next meeting. Okay, we've done new business. Let's go to public comment. Yes,
I just want, even though I didn't, Bill Schmidt,
Bill Schmidt.
Precinct 5, just, I didn't agree with everything you did, but I thought you did a great job. I think the council should be commended.
and I think the OSC should be commended too for the work they
Absolutely.
did. And
Serve both
again,
health.
no matter what was done, how it's done, what's going on the ballot, what's not going on the ballot, as crazy as it seems, in less than 2 years, we'll be starting it again. So, all right, so, any public comment from the audience, the Zoom audience?
They all went to sleep.
They all fell asleep today.
Any public relations?
Oh, we
Council
do.
Honan?
No.
We do have a public.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry.
And you unmute, Karen.
Karen Chavez, Precinct 2. Needless to say, I'm very disappointed in your votes as far as the size, terms, and composition of the council. I hate to mention this, but Vice President Ruggiero has brought it up more than once about composition of other cities and towns. If you look at our bordering cities, Revere and Boston, they have a mayor for 4 years and councilors for 2 years. And it seems to work out very, very well. I'm sorry that you couldn't see this. Again, these votes tonight, I think, deter people from even wanting to serve on an ordinance review committee meeting. Why would you bother with anything that you have to say the council turns down? I still say that these things should have gone to the voters and not just to the council.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public comment? Public relations, Council Honan?
No.
Council Fusillo, any public relations?
No, nothing from me.
Thank you. Councilor Munson?
I have just one quick announcement. We have 2 upcoming blood drives at the Oddfellows Lodge. So if you are in the mood of giving life-giving blood, look up drives in the future at our lodge.
Thank you. Councilor Belcher?
I just want to thank the public library for the talk they put on about the Great Molasses Flood. It was well attended, so thank you.
Thank you. Councilor DeMarco?
Just want to thank my fellow counselors. Not the easiest day. So, thank you all.
Councilor Aiello?
Hope for clear skies Saturday night and go out and look for the green comet.
Okay, bundle up.
Thank you
Make
for
sure
my
you bundle
Google
up,
search
'cause it's
for the
gonna
night.
Bundle up. It's gonna be cold.
Negative
Councilor
33.
Flockhart? Vice President Ruggiero? Town Clerk Quist?
No, I'm good.
Are you big into this?
Second.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Council by Council DeMarco, second by Council Munson. Any discussion? None, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, the ayes have it.